Welcome to Salem Witch Trials Daily. I'm Josh Hutchinson.
This is Sarah Jack. Today, witches allegedly congregated on the lawn of Salem Village minister Samuel Parris. And John Willard finally had his first court hearing.
According to Mary Warren's June 1st deposition against many people, George Burroughs' Specter supposedly invaded her jail cell today and blew his trumpet, calling the specters of other witches. They all tried to get Warren to accompany them to their meeting at Samuel Parris's Pasture, but she declined.
A warrant was issued today for the arrest of Roger Toothaker in Billerica, a healer and a self-proclaimed witch finder who was the brother-in-law of Martha Carrier. Roger was living in Salem in May 1692 while his family remained in Billerica. He was charged with using witchcraft to afflict Elizabeth Hubbard, Ann Putnam Jr., Mary Walcott, etc.
Magistrates issued a warrant for Roger's arrest, and Constable Joseph Neal promptly arrested him and brought him before the court.
No record of Roger's examination by the magistrates exists today, so we do not know when such a hearing was held or what evidence was presented against Roger. And only one deposition is submitted against him before he, unfortunately, dies in jail on June 16th.
Today, the Salem magistrates examined Elizabeth Hart, Thomas Farrar Sr., Rebecca Jacobs, John Willard, and mother and daughter Sarah Buckley and Mary Witheridge. Unfortunately, only one of these examination records exists today, from the examination of John Willard.
During John's examination, Magistrate John Hathorne trotted out the old line that fleeing authority is an acknowledgement of guilt, which, on the face of it, is untrue. John Willard could have lived if he'd been able to stay away from those like Hathorne who had prejudged him. Instead, he was hanged on August 19, 1692.
Throughout the hearing, John Willard maintained his innocence, not acknowledging anything. He began by saying, "I shall, as I hope, I shall be assisted by the Lord of heaven, and for my going away I was frightened, and I thought by my withdrawing it might be better. I fear not, but the Lord in his due time will make me as white as snow."
As usual, the afflicted people fell into fits any time John Willard looked in their direction. The afflicted accused John of biting them, and then someone said, "Open your mouth, don't bite your lips." John said, "I will stand with my mouth open, or I will keep it shut. I will stand anyhow, if you will tell me how."
Testimony from Ann Putnam Jr. and Susanna Sheldon was read in the court, after which Hathorne asked, "What do you say to this murdering and bewitching your relations?"
John said, "One would think no creature except they belong to hell from their cradle would be guilty of such things." At one point, John offered large talk, which prompted Hathorne to scold him, saying, "We do not send for you to preach." So he was trying to defend against killing his own relative.
Yeah, and Hathorne's accusing him of lecturing him, like, "We don't need you telling us this stuff." And Benjamin Wilkins testified that John Willard was especially cruel to his wife. So John asked that she be called upon as a witness herself. His request was ignored, or the response was just not written down.
Susanna Sheldon claimed the black man was telling John Willard not to confess. Judge Hathorne asked what John had to say to that. "Sir," he said, "I heard nothing nor see anything." Susanna approached John Willard, but fell down.
Judge Hathorne asked, "What is the reason she cannot come near you?"
John Willard said they cannot come near any that are accused, which was true. The afflicted always fell when they went to approach a suspected witch in court.
John Hathorne had a moment here. He said, "Why do you say so? They could come near Nehemiah Abbott. The children could talk with him."
That was because they had decided Nehemiah was not the man they'd seen in their visions, and so they weren't afraid of him and didn't need to make a case against him.
And the magistrates tried the touch test. And of course it worked. It always worked. The afflicted knew the game. Mary Warren was carried to Willard in the midst of a fit. He clasped his hand upon her arm, and she was immediately well. But she knew how it worked, and she knew that he was going to do that. The afflicted now claimed the ghosts of those who John Willard had murdered were surrounding him.
The magistrates tried the Lord's Prayer test, which of course he failed. Nearly everyone who was put on the spot in this way missed a word here or there. So did John. In the end, he said that he could say the Lord's Prayer at other times, but he struggled now. Of course, now all others in the room sat in judgment of him.
And John Hathorne said, "Do not you see God will not suffer you to pray to him? Are not you sensible of it?"
Willard said, "Why, it is a strange thing."
Hathorne said, "No, it is no strange thing that God will not suffer a wizard to pray to him. There is also the jury of inquest that will bear hard against you. Therefore confess. Have you never wished harm to your neighbors?" Willard said, "No, never since I had a being."
Hathorne said, "Well, confess and give glory to God. Take counsel whilst it is offered."
Willard said, "I desire to take good counsel, but if it was the last time I was to speak, I am innocent." And in addition to John Willard being examined in court, many people submitted testimony against him today. Mary Walcott, Mercy Lewis, Ann Putnam Jr., Elizabeth Hubbard, Susanna Sheldon, Abigail Williams, Benjamin Wilkins, Thomas Flint, Samuel Parris, Nathaniel Ingersoll, Thomas Putnam, Edward Putnam, and John Putnam Jr. submitted testimony against John Willard.
Susanna Sheldon made a statement against Elizabeth Colson. A second arrest warrant had been issued for the fugitive Colson the day before.
And Abigail Williams, Benjamin Wilkins, Thomas Flint, John Putnam Jr., Elizabeth Hubbard, Ann Putnam Jr., and Mary Walcott also testified against Sarah Buckley.
Also today, Elizabeth Booth was deposed against Mary Warren and Daniel Andrew, brother-in-law of George Jacobs Jr.
Elizabeth Hubbard was deposed today against Rebecca Jacobs, wife of George Jacobs Jr.
And finally, John Willard, Roger Toothaker, Thomas Farrar Sr., and Elizabeth Hart were transferred to the jail in Boston.
Thomas Farrar Sr. was a 75-year-old man from Lynn. Due to his age and his name, he was sometimes referred to as Old Father Pharaoh.
Elizabeth Hart was a 70-year-old Lynn woman married to Isaac Hart. Elizabeth and Isaac's son, Thomas, was a bricklayer.
And today, Mary Esty was released from jail. The afflicted accusers, other than Mercy Lewis, did not recognize her any longer as someone who was afflicting them. So the magistrates released her to the custody of her own family.